Hi everyone, I'm Anna Martin and this is the Flex podcast. And today we're going to be talking about snacks and stuff like that because we've been talking about it a lot on the Big Four that we're just finishing off at the moment. One of the things that has been coming up is kind of not being able to stop snacking or reaching for things that people would consider to be like a bad snack, or just generally finding that whole snacking scenario a little bit stressful in terms of the management of our overall nutrition. So basically, first and foremost, snack is anything that you're eating in between your meals, right? So you've got breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then depending on where you live in the country, breakfast, dinner and tea or whatever it is, and then you've got your snacks in between there. Now, not everyone is into snacking. Some people will graze all day and not eat so much of a big meal. Some people will need their meals and snacks, and some people will just wait for their meals. So everyone's different with how they approach this. So that is something worth bearing in mind, that sometimes just because it's our routine doesn't mean that it's something that we necessarily need individually, because we are all different. And some people will need more snacks and that kind of stuff than someone else. So just remember that we are all different, and that just because it's something we've done forever doesn't mean it is something that we have to do for the rest of our lives. So the first thing I'd say is that look at how you lay your meals out. How I just said it is a very British way, right? So we have breakfast first thing in the morning, then we have a snack like 11 p.m, half 10, 11. Then we have lunch, and then another snack in the afternoon, and then we have dinner, like anything between 6 and 8:30 p.m, depending on the person. And we can get quite rigid in what we expect things to be like. So we always have a snack at 10:30, and we always have lunch at 12:30, and it's very, very rigid. So it's worthwhile just kind of opening up our minds a little bit. Remember that other countries eat at different times than we do, so there isn't anything to say that the way that we're doing it is exactly perfect. And it may be that slightly different routine with it might work better for you. So we're going to look at the types of foods that you're having in your meals. So if you're eating enough in your meals. Now, if you're trying to come in slightly lower calories, so you're trying to perhaps lose a bit of weight, we've probably slashed our calories a little bit. That means that our meals are going to look a bit smaller. Now, if we're saving calories then to snack in between, like breakfast and lunch, for example, or lunch and dinner, whatever, we're saving these calories to have a decent sized snack, then our meals are getting smaller and smaller. So that in itself doesn't necessarily make us feel that satiated, both in terms of fullness and in terms of the type of stuff that we're eating. So firstly, you want to make sure that you've got a nice mixture on the plate of like proteins and fats, and obviously we can add in extra size to the plate by having veg on it. So that will massively change how your eye sees that plate, because it will have so much more food in it. In terms of the amount of volume of the food as well, veg is low calorie compared to the volume of food that you have. So that can also help in terms of making you feel fuller, because that is part of this, in that our insides need to feel full in order to send signals to our brain to be like, okay, you're done now, we've had enough. So let's think about those kind of things that can help a lot in terms of, one, increasing food volume, and two, making sure that we've got what we need in there to have that slightly longer experience with our digestion. So therefore we're not feeling as hungry as quickly when we get to it. So have a little balance with your plate. And then again, when we're coming back to this kind of layout of where we're eating our meals, think, am I being a little bit too rigid with what I'm expecting to eat at each meal? In the UK, we are very rigid that at lunchtime we eat sandwich and a bag of crisps, for example, or a salad and a bag of crisps. These are strong lunchtime foods, or a bowl of soup. These are very strong British lunchtime foods that we will eat at lunchtime and no other. And I love a sandwich. I love a salad, I love a soup. I'm not slagging them off or cussing them out or trying to say that you shouldn't eat them. But sometimes we might want to think, actually, is this food the best thing for me at this time? I've spoken about this before, but if you're making some boring ass salad with like iceberg lettuce and 3 bits of cucumber in for your lunch and then some dry chicken, you are probably not going to feel that satisfied with that meal. Therefore, you are going to be looking at a snack again in a bit. Likewise, if it's you're having like a soup and because you're trying to be good, you're not having any bread with it. There's also not a lot of protein in that soup because you haven't had like a bean soup, a homemade bean soup or something, just tomato or whatever. There's not that much in it that's going to make you feel that full for the rest of the afternoon. Sandwich wise, unless you're having some kind of meat or fish in there, maybe some cheese or like a veggie replacement product or something, again, it can end up being a bit of a carb fest. So if you're like a Marmite sandwich lover, for example, then, and I'm not hating on Marmite, also really love it, but it's not going to make you feel that full for that long an amount of time, because there's just not your proteins and fats in there that are going to help to slow down that digestion a little bit and also give you that feeling of that bit of bulk in there, if you know what I mean. So have a little think about our rigidity around what we're doing. And for example, if you know that you like to snack in the evening, then you need to have a bit of space for that in terms of what you're holding for that. So for example, if you're having your dinner at like 5 with the kids, it's quite a long time then not to eat anything until the very next day. So we might think, actually, we need to be able to snack in the evening a bit. So one, I'm going to potentially make sure that I'm saving a tiny amount of calories for later. Not too much, because obviously you want to feel full from your meals. But maybe I'm holding back some calories for later, and I'm also going to invest in some snacks that I know are going to help me hit my goals a little bit and also still make me feel like I'm having them. So we have that kind of balance with snacks in terms of, one, you could go for like lower calorie alternatives of the snacks that you usually have. So if you love McCoys, for example, you could get like baked Walkers, save a little bit of calorie, for example. However, for some people that doesn't work because they just then have the McCoys anyway. So then, because it's not the thing they wanted. So for some people, psychologically, it will work better to have the thing that they actually wanted, but either, be aware that that's going to happen. So we're maybe holding back some calories for it, or just thinking, I'm going to have some of these. That massively depends on your psychology, because I've never saved anything for later. That is not a thing that exists in my soul. My dad could be like, I'm going to have a couple of these crisps and I will save the rest for later. That I can't imagine happening to me, because if I have a packed lunch, I will have eaten the entire thing by midday at the latest, very, very occasionally by 12:30. My entire packed lunch. I've got absolutely no saving for later capacity in any context. Although I can have my food made for me and left in the fridge, and I won't eat it until lunchtime if I'm at home. However, when it's a packed lunch, I just can't do it. Something weird in my brain. So if you become aware of the things that happen in your brain, like if you're lying to yourself and saying, do you know what? I'm going to just have half of this bag of crisps, and then I'm going to put a clip in it, put it back in my lunchbox. But you know full well that shit's not going to happen. Then we just have to be aware of that, so we're not constantly trying to lie to ourselves about something. Because what happens is then we feel like we've failed. So then we get cross ourselves. Then we think we've fallen off some wagon that we made. So then we just don't bother. So it could be you're on a Wednesday, you accidentally ate an entire family bag of crisps because you took them with you, and actually you couldn't save them for later because it's not in your DNA. So then you ate the entire family bag of crisps, and now it's Wednesday, you decided to fuck off your entire healthy eating kick till next Monday, because now you've ruined it. There's no point doing it unless it's a Monday. We have to kind of be aware of where we're at with our psychology around that. Because I would jump on in there and say, just because you had a normal sized toffee crisp rather than the snack variety doesn't mean that your entire week needs to be written off. It just meant that you had a nice toffee crisp and you enjoyed it, and now you're going to get on with the rest of your day exactly as it was before, eating food that you're trying to nourish your body with, feel well fueled, look after yourself, and then also you enjoyed a toffee crisp. That, I would say, would be the end of the conversation about it as far as I'm concerned, and then you just carry on the rest of the week trying to look after yourself as you would have before you ate the toffee crisp. There's no wagon. We never want to feel like we're on a diet or trying to eliminate certain foods unless we need to or unless it works for us. What is better is to be generally well balanced. And that means if you want something, you really want it, you have it, and then you crack back on with the rest of your day. Some of us can feel a little bit, we can overreact to the fact that we ate 2 fingers of fudge instead of 1. And then we're like, oh my God, I've just ruined everything. So that's an extra 150 calories. Dare I say it, I would just get a tiny bit of a grip and just be like, Joe, I had an extra chocolate bar. The world's still turning. I'm still going to eat healthily and crack back on. And there comes to a point a little bit where we can potentially start to recognize as well, oh, I've gone off on a tangent. Yes, that's what I was going to say. If we can start to recognize when we might actually want and need a snack versus when we're just bored and we're looking for something to do. And I say that with love because I am the person that is bored and needs something to do most of the time. I can't sit still. I fidget. I bite my nails. I eat all the time. I snack all the time. I used to smoke when I was younger. I suck my thumb when I was younger. I pick my face. I touch my hair. I can't be still. So some of the time when I think, oh God, I need a snack, it is purely because I cannot be still and I need to put something in my face. And it isn't because I'm actually hungry. So what I try to do is to make sure that I am doing things that can potentially help with that fidgetiness. So I put, for example, cuticle oil on my desk and I rub that into my cuticles when I feel like I'm going to nibble at myself. I have water all the time so that I'm always drinking water. One, because I am always thirsty, which is random, but also because a lot of the time I just need something to do, and actually it isn't anything to do with me needing to eat because there's no hunger signals. I don't feel empty or feel hungry or any of those things. I just need to shove something in my mouth. So it's literally starting to be a bit more aware of ourselves and what is happening with inside our body and what we might be able to do to help combat that. Also, sometimes you might have like an extra snack. So the other day, for example, I was starving after my workout and hadn't brought snacks. So I wasn't thinking that I would be starving, but I was actually so hungry that I couldn't even focus. So I bought these houmous crisp things off reception. And they come in a huge bag. And when I say huge, it's rather large. So a 45-gram bag, which sounds not that heavy, but these are very light things. So there's a lot in there. And I don't need to eat them all, but obviously I can't save anything for later, so I did. The reality of it is, then I went home to have lunch after I trained one client. So then, like, I'd eat an entire bag of carbohydrate as a snack. Probably didn't need to add any extra carbohydrate to my lunch because I literally just had some. So it was a really easy balance to do and actually not that stressful because then I was back on track with where I thought my day was going to be anyway. I still was well fueled. I just happened to have needed my carbohydrates earlier than I'd originally planned. No biggie. No wagon to fall off. Don't really care. It's fine. So we're going to get off this wagon and we're just going to live our lives, try to fuel ourselves well, take away as much of the guilt as we can, because that definitely feeds into this as well. So if you suddenly start feeling guilty that you've done something, then you're more likely to think, oh, well, fuck it now. I'm just going to crack on with eating exactly like how I used to for the rest of this week, so there's no point bothering. And I know that to be true because I have done that myself with food, but I also definitely used to do it when I used to smoke. So I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go out for a drink tonight, so there's no point stopping now because I might have 1 or 2 tonight, I may as well just smoke for the rest of the week. It's a ridiculous thing that I used to do to myself. Honestly, I could have just gone, all right, well, I've had 2 now. fine, that's cool. I enjoyed them. Well, I'm just going to leave it now and see what happens when I go out on Saturday. See if I feel like it on Saturday, and then I'll, just play it by ear and refocus myself a little bit, rather than just continue to smoke for the rest of the 3 days in between. And when you think about it like that, it does put things into perspective a little bit. It's like the same with drinking alcohol, right? Just because you had a glass of wine on a Wednesday doesn't mean you have to have one on Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday as well. We can choose to spread it out. And I do know that food is not as bad for you as smoking cigarettes. I'm not trying to say it is. But if we constantly put a lot of shit in our body, we don't feel that great either. So if you feel like you're off the wagon, so now you're literally going to survive on a diet of crisps and chocolate for 4 days because why the fuck not? You've ruined it anyway. Then we're also not really setting ourselves up to feel that great and function that well. Whilst there's nothing wrong with either of those things in the quantity that sometimes we can consume them because we feel like we've fallen off the wagon, it can fuck with our feng shui a little bit, let's be honest, because we want to feel good, we want to move well, we want to be able to train, we want to feel energetic, we want to sleep well, we want our digestion to be good, we don't want to feel dodgy in our intestinal quarters. So we do potentially want to look at probably not doing that all the time, because there are other nutrients that we do need that we know that are important for things like energy, for things like cancer prevention, for things like energy in terms of energy release, in terms of muscular contractions, all those kind of things. We need different nutrients. So let's try not to think about it as some kind of wagony situation. 2 other little tips and tricks that I definitely used a lot when I finally was not smoking. It was a long time ago, but it's that if I still want it in 10 minutes, I can have it. So, when you get that overwhelming urge to have something, I would say to myself, and I do it with sometimes with food and stuff now, if I still want it in 10 minutes, I can have it. I also like caffeine a lot, by the way, so it comes into that a bit as well. I could be like, oh, I really want some caffeine. It's like, well, cool. If you still want it in 10 minutes, you can have it. And a lot of the time, in 10 minutes, you've immersed yourself in another task, so you no longer give a shit about the original thing that you were thinking about because you've started something else. And actually, that shifts things back a little bit. So even if ultimately you do end up having the thing that you're trying not to have anyway, the fact that you've delayed it helps a little bit, because now you've had some control over it, one, which makes you feel very good, and 2, it's delayed it in terms of timeline, which might potentially help you in terms of your food layout, because maybe you weren't hungry anyway, but you were just craving this thing because you wanted something to do, something to eat, something to kind of make your brain feel happy. And actually now you've delayed it, you're getting used to not having it a bit, and you're able to spread your food out a bit better over the day, for example. The other thing I would say is recognize the law of diminishing returns. So I'm going to use alcohol for an example. That first sip, first half a glass of wine, first pint of cider if you drink really fast, or pint of lager if you drink fast, or the first few sips of something is the best thing you have ever tasted in your life. It's wonderful. Same with food. That first square or 2 of chocolate, that first slice of pizza, it's like mouth-watering. It's incredible. As you get into your second slice or second glass, it still tastes great. It doesn't taste as good as that first one, the one that made you literally soil yourself with joy. Doesn't taste as good as that first one. The third one, things are starting to get a fraction mundane now in terms of taste and sensation and the way that your brain and your emotions are responding to eating that thing. It's changing a bit. And that's me I'm not being ridiculous. I'm not telling you only have 1 square of chocolate, that's all you need. That's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm saying is it's something to reflect on. Because again, when we're kind of on this all or nothing tip, it can feel a little bit like, well, now I've had 1, I may as well eat the whole thing. Or I may as well crack on and just do this, and because now there's no point bothering, or, well, I've had 2 slices, I may as well have 5 more. And a lot of that can come from, like, I'm a clear my plate kind of gal. So if it's on my plate or I thought it was mine, it's going in my face. I don't really have that, oh, but I'm so full. I don't think I'll have a second slice. I feel quite full already. No, I don't. I could definitely fit that in. And it's like almost like a challenge. And I think that's partly because I used to race my brother to eat when I was younger. And also, we used to clear the plate. That was like our family rules, clear your plate. So actually, sometimes when you have that mindset and food can be kind of something that you're craving, can be quite difficult to stop, because you're like, well, I must finish this because I ordered it, or because I bought it, or I cooked it. I will eat the entire plate and I'll lick it clean afterwards. Not just me, I hope, because I definitely do that as well, especially if there's peronaise on there. Not when I'm in Nando's, when I'm at home. Just to be clear, I don't lick my plate in Nando's. But we have these kind of things that we get into, and actually some of that can be taken away a bit by starting to recognise, actually, I do feel full. No, I don't need to clear my plate because I am not 12 anymore, and I can still have pudding if I want to because I'm a grown up, and it's just sort of starting to take away some of the things that you have set in your head, that you're very rigid about in your head, that can actually start to become a little bit freer. Now we're getting to know ourselves and know that we're older. Yes, I think that's all my points. So I'm going to stop talking, and I hope that's been helpful. Do think outside the box a bit with your snacks. I do sometimes go to Marks and Spencer's, like a big one, not just the garage version, and have a look at what they've got in their sandwichy section, their snack things. Tesco's have actually got a lot better, because sometimes in your head, you're like, oh, my snack is always a crisp. And actually, your snack might be some chicken or a little egg pot, or I don't know, anything, because it's a snack is something that's lower in calories. It's a small thing that you have to top you up in between your main meals. So it can be literally anything. It could be a tiny version of a meal, to be honest, or not that tiny if you're not eating huge meals. So there can be that in there as well. That actually, what about if you had leftovers from something? A small amount of that can easily serve as a snack, and it's probably quite well balanced. And then you don't have to eat it to finish it in the first place, like me. Me and my clear my plate stuff. So there's so many different ways that we can start to relook at the way that we eat. And a lot of it is just becoming a bit self-aware with what we might have as, I don't like this word, I think it's a shit word, like our toxic traits around food, that we could be kind of like quite mean to ourselves, or every time we go on a diet, we must get out the iceberg lettuce because we couldn't possibly have anything else apart from an iceberg lettuce salad. I don't hate iceberg lettuce either, by the way. I actually really like it. But you know what I mean. This is what every time I go on a diet, I always get my salads in. And actually, they're not that interesting or that exciting. Or you do something really crap, like you swap to something that tastes like the floor purely because it's lower in calories. And actually, it's still got calories in it. It just tastes like the floor. But then afterwards, you still want something that tastes better because the first thing tasted so shit, it was pointless. So sometimes we just have to re-look at the way that we kind of come across healthy eating and how we interact with it, the relationship that we have with our food can be really important, especially when it comes to snacking. And also, like, sometimes the thing we want most, a bit of it, is enough to calm us down. So, for example, I really like Cadbury's chocolate. If I buy a 200-gram bar or whatever a family bar is, that shit's not in the cupboard for long. I'll tell you that for free. So I don't buy them unless I've got people coming round. And instead, I don't buy them to have in my house either. But I will walk to the garage on my morning commute to buy like a finger of fudge or a Turkish delight or a 12 or whatever it is. I physically have to walk to go and get it on my walking from home days, purely because if I had a bar in the cupboard, I'd be like, oh, do you know what, that'd be really nice grated on my breakfast. Do you know what? That probably is the same protein content as my protein yogurt, I'll have that instead. Or worse, I'll just pour half the bar into my protein yogurt. Fabulous. So we have to just get a little bit aware of ourselves and sort of where we're going from and to. Also, nothing wrong with my Cadbury's chocolate, but I know that there's no way that I would be able to stay in my kind of calorie budget if I had a family-sized bar of dairy milk, especially the one with the mini eggs in. Sensational, can I just say, if you haven't tried it. Anyway, on that note, because I'm not really helping with this now I'm just talking about chocolate, I shall speak to you another time. But yeah, let's just be aware of what we're doing. Try to think outside the box a bit when it comes to the rigidity of what it is that we're doing. And also have a bit of fun with it. So there's some really exciting shit out at the moment in terms of the supermarket. And we don't always have to fall for the marketing. Just because there's high protein on the front doesn't mean it's any higher than the cheaper version. So for example, get those sexy little pots of nuts in their individual packaging. There's probably not that much difference between those and actually buying a bag of cashew nuts and having them, measuring them out separately into a portion. There's not any difference between those things. So actually we can make life a lot cheaper for ourselves by getting inspired by what's in the supermarket and then doing our own version. But if it works for you to have it in individual portions, so you don't do what I do. I don't do it with cashew nuts, by the way. They're actually happily in the cupboard. But if you know there's a certain food where once you've opened it, you are screwed, then do buy them in individual portions so that it makes life easier for you because you know you're only going to take one out. Like, we are all so different and our relationship with food and different foods is very different. And that's absolutely fine. We just have to get used to perhaps thinking about doing things a different way, looking at food a different way, looking at our habits a different way, trying to be as self-aware as possible. And rather than getting angry at ourselves all the time, being like, do you know what? I like food. And that is absolutely okay because we need it to fuel ourselves. It needs to taste nice, otherwise we wouldn't eat enough. There are purposes to why things taste good. But just thinking, how can I balance this in my day? How can I make my snacks work for me? How can I have control over what it is that I am eating rather than constantly feeling like I've got urges, all these uncontrollable urges that we have, people. There are things that we can do to kind of like manage those. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with your urges. Go now. Goodbye. Oh dear.